Smart CEOs prepare their growth before it actually happens. We're in Q4, and something that I've historically seen is business owners wait until December and all of a sudden they're scrambling, trying to figure out what their strategy is and what they want their 2026 to look like. Or worse, January hits and they are super overwhelmed and they don't actually know what they're supposed to be focused on. That leads to them feeling overwhelmed, reactive, and the team also doesn't know what direction they're going in. So if you're watching this, then that means that you are ahead of the curve. So good job. The difference between companies that are going to thrive in 2026 versus those that are just going to survive is really getting intentional about your planning and where you want to go. So I know a systems audit sounds super boring, but it is going to be the one thing that will really help drive your success in 2026. So if you just focus on one thing this quarter, set yourself up for success, do a systems audit, review your metrics, review what worked, and review what you want to close from 2025. So let's run through a mini systems audit right now. But before we jump in, let's talk about why it matters. Your 2026 growth depends vitally on what you're doing right now in 2025. This is a chance to review what worked and close out those chapters that you're ready to let go of. So, the first place that we're going to audit is the team roles and team capacity. When the team is overloaded, that's going to be the first place that you experience a bottleneck in your growth. So, the first thing that you can audit is what everybody is doing. What's the current roles in the company? Map it out. Each person, what are their current roles? What are their responsibilities? Where are they maybe overloaded? Where are they just about to reach that point? And if you don't know what that looks like, then you'll need to have those conversations with those team members before going into 2026. So that can actually be part of this audit, is sitting down with each of your team members and getting a really clear idea of where they're spending their time, where they're spending their energy, what is igniting them, what's energizing them, and what is taking the most of their time. Once you have a really clear idea of each person on your team, where they're focused and where their capacity is, then you can start to see where do you need to hire next in order to take on more clients or take on more growth as a company. And then once you've mapped out those specific roles, now it's time to make the plan. What does the timeline look like for hiring? What does the onboarding look like for that team member? What type of training do they need? Do you already have that training in place, or do you need to build out an onboarding system for them? Another thing that you can look at is, where are you using your tools? Are you using your tools? So the different softwares in your company, are you using them to the best of their ability? Sometimes you don't need to add more people to your team. Sometimes you need to be using your tools smarter, really optimizing them and making the most out of the functionality that they're offering. Another thing that you can look at is, where's your strategy for AI in 2026? There are definitely things that can support your team beyond just adding more team members. You can look at different ways that you're using your software, different ways that you can integrate AI, different ways that you can use automation. There are so many creative ways to bring support to your team that goes beyond just hiring. So as you are looking at your team capacity, start to notice any areas that you can give them support in ways that is really utilizing your tech and your softwares. The second area you're going to want to audit is, what processes broke this year? What processes caused the most frustration in 2025? What that could look like is, what were the things that fell through the cracks? What created the most friction for yourself and your team? Were there things that took way longer than you wanted them to? Which clients or client projects were the hardest to manage? A lot of times, as companies grow, what worked for you when you were making 250,000, 500,000 are going to start to feel the pressure and start to break under that pressure as you scale beyond that. So start to notice, okay, what worked when we had 20 people going through this process, but what happens when we go to 50 or 100 people? What is going to break then? Start to look ahead, not only at what didn't work or what started to break this year, but what could also potentially break as you add more volume and growth to it. So a really great example of this is, say you have a client onboarding experience, and part of that client onboarding experience is you directly, as the owner of the company, meet with that person during the onboarding process. Now, that might work when you have 5, 10 clients a month. But as you go to 15, 20, and 50 clients a month, then that's going to be all you're doing as the founder. So that's an example of where a system's going to break as you add more volume, as you add more people. So now you need to go back to the drawing board and start to identify and start to ask yourself, how can I still have that personal touch, but maybe not directly meet with each one of those people? So again, that may not be something that applies to your business, but it's just an example to help you start to think about where those systems might break. The third area to audit is your tech stack. So what do I mean by that? The different softwares and tools that you're using in your business. So one of the things that I like to have is a running list of all the tools that you're using in your business, how much they cost, who's using them, and when they are going to be up for renewal. You'd be surprised at how many companies I go to who don't even know how many tools that they're using in the business. And then as we start to audit it, they realize they haven't used, software X, Y, and Z for 2 years, and yet they're still paying for it. Having this as part of your regular audit can help you avoid those costs that accumulate from tools that you're not using. When you're doing your audit, you also want to look at the different tools that you're using and if they're actually talking to each other. There's different ways that you can integrate the tools. Maybe you're using 5 tools when you could be using 3. So, really looking at, are you making the most out of everything that you're currently using? And where can you streamline? Another area that I love to look at when we're doing a tech audit is what new features have been rolled out that maybe we're not aware of that we could be taking full advantage of as a company to help us grow and to support our team. Many softwares are rolling out new features every month or really frequently, but it's hard to keep up with all of those new features and how they integrate into your team and your strategy. When you are running the day-to-day business, you don't have time to be researching what tools, what features, and all those different aspects. But if you set aside time to truly do this audit, now you have time to really review those features. And guess what? You don't actually have to be the one that does it. Delegate this to your team and have them come to you with a report on how to get the most out of the tools that they are using. Audit area number 4 is communication and decision making. Communication flow is so important and it is vital to having things run smoothly. Some things that you want to audit is how long does it take for your team to respond to important questions? Where do decisions get stuck in the decision making process? How does your team know what to focus on and what the priorities are? A really funny story about this is a recent vacation I took with my family. All of a sudden, I realized that we had 5 different threads going. There were 2 people on this thread, 4 people on this thread, 5 people on another thread. There actually was no thread that we all were on. How crazy is that? So, one of the things that I did, being the operations person that I love being in all scenarios, I said, hey guys, we need to all get on the same thread. So, I made a group chat that we all were on, and I made sure I said thumbs up if you get this message. So, you wanted to verify that they all were on the thread and that they could read the thread. Once I got that verification, I started to funnel all of our communication in that one thread. So deleting all those other threads. It's silly, but that's a great example that communication can get siloed so easily. And this is how people get left out of decision making. This is how balls get dropped when communication isn't streamlined. You put that on a larger scale, it's important to have meetings that everybody is involved in. Even if it's not their department, it's important that they are involved in what's going on in the company so that they understand the bigger picture and how their role and their tasks and their projects are impacting the bigger picture. Audit area number 5, this is the last area that we'll review today, is your financial systems and visibility. You can't manage what you can't measure. So, some things to think about when you're auditing your financials and your financial systems and having visibility into those systems is how quickly and accurately can you actually get financial information? Not only do you know your company's profit margin, but do you know the profit margin by product, by surface, by team member? Maybe you have service providers in the company. Do you know their profit margin? Something that a lot of clients struggle with is cash flow management. Now, obviously, I'm not a CFO, but as a systems person and a systems person in your business, you need to be knowing what the cash flow is and have that person in your company who can help you with those decisions. Another question that you really want to be asking is, do you have visibility into your cash flow? Can you look ahead and know when your cash flow is going to dip, when it's going to be high, and be able to prepare operationally and strategically for those dips and those highs. When you have visibility into your financials of your company, it's what helps you really make those decisions that are going to have the biggest impact on your company. I can't tell you how many companies I've gone into when I ask, how much money do you make every month? And they actually can't even tell me. And it takes a while for us to even get that information. You don't necessarily need to know everything off the top of your head, but it is important to have a really good pulse on your basic numbers, your basic revenue, your expenses, your profit margins, and having the systems in place to capture that accurately. Okay, so now that I've given you the top 5 areas to audit, it's your turn to now actually go and do it. The key to a great audit is not to have a huge list of everything you want to fix all at once. The goal is to have visibility into the areas, maybe the top 3 areas that you know are going to make the biggest impact on your business if you focus on fixing those areas first. An audit can be scary and overwhelming because sometimes it's easier not to look under the hood. But the great news is that once you get into the habit of doing this, then you have knowledge, and knowledge is power. So once you've gone through your audit and you've identified maybe one area in each of those 5 areas that we've talked about, focus on the top 3, like I said, that are going to make the highest impact if you fix those right away. Then deprioritize the other 2 for when you have time. Maybe focus on those top 3 in Q1 and get to those other 2 in Q2. Don't wait until you're overwhelmed or those things that you said, oh, I'm not going to look under the hood, become way too obvious for you not to look at. Get ahead of it. You will thank yourself. And 2026, you will thank yourself for doing this audit. So, to motivate you, here's a few reasons why you should do this now. I want you to imagine January feeling spacious, peaceful. You're excited to get back into the office after a holiday break instead of feeling overwhelmed, anxious, and scattered, not knowing where you're going to focus. You no longer have missed opportunities because you didn't look back and see what to let go of and what to double down on in 2026. Your team is excited, energized, and empowered instead of feeling burned out at capacity and scattered and disorganized. This audit is really about creating time for your team and for you to identify exactly where you need to focus in 2026. Before you even jump into this audit, the first place that you should start is with your own time and your own schedule. Because you, as the CEO, as the founder, you are leading the company and you have to have the energy, the bandwidth, and the time resource to lead your team. If you want to take more control of your time without burning out, I put together a free resource on how to manage your time as a CEO and a founder. You can grab it below. The link is in the description. Thanks for watching.